私は、15年前に政治の世界を引いてから、田舎に引っ込んで、しばらく静かな暮らしをしてまいりましたが、どうも少し政府が考えていること、その物事の進め方、向き合い方というものが、どうも少しおかしいのではないかという感じがしてきました。いろいろなことがあるんですけども、一つ一つについては時間の関係もありますから申し上げませんが、例えばエネルギー基本計画の中で政府が基幹エネルギーの電源として原発を位置づけると、まだ最終的な報告ではありませんけれども、おそらく近いうちにそういうことを言い出すのだろうと思います。12月には原発を再稼働するという方向を明確にいたしました。そのことが私が今回立候補を決意するに至った一番直接的な動機であります。
I would like to speak at the beginning for a few minutes. As many of you know, 15 years ago, I did retire from the political world, and I lived in a rural area, and I was leading a very quiet and fairly happy and very happy life. However, over time, I began to watch what the government was doing and thinking, and in regard to the direction that the government seemed to be heading towards, I felt that there was something not quite right, not quite correct. I have many ideas about many different things that the government is doing, but because I'm limited in terms of time, I would like to speak specifically about one issue that has caused me some concern, and that is in regard to what has been presented by the government as the basic plan for energy. As you know, the government seems to be considering the idea of putting nuclear energy at the heart of this basic energy plan. I know that this is not yet the final version of their plan, but it seems that the government is moving very much in that direction. And to be more specific, in December of last year, the government did come out and very clearly state that it did intend to restart some nuclear power plants. As a result, I felt that I must do something, and this was the most direct reason or cause for my declaring my candidacy for this election.
東京では直下型地震への対応とか、あるいは福祉、介護、医療、子育て、教育、さまざまなテーマがあることはもちろんでありますが、中でも一番大きなテーマは、この東京が世界の主要な都市の中でも一番速いスピードで少子高齢化に向かっているということであります。この東京砂漠でお年寄りが一人で亡くなったりするしるべのない無縁社会というものが、どんどん、広がりつつある、そういう状況からお互いが助け合う隣組というものが昔江戸時代からありました。そうした隣組的な、お互いに助け合うような、ネットワークのシステムというものを行政も支援して何か作っていくことができないだろうかと、例えばそんなことも考えております。
As you know, Tokyo is faced with a myriad of different issues. For example, in regard to establishing countermeasures to deal with the possibility of a huge earthquake occurring beneath Tokyo, in regard to different issues for medical care, for nursing care, for child rearing, for education. There are many problems, again, that face this city. However, one thing that causes me tremendous concern is the fact that of all of the major cities of the world, Tokyo is the one where the graying of society and the declining birth rate is an enormous issue. We are graying faster than any major city in the world. As a result, we have seen situations where older people have found themselves dying in the desert that is now Tokyo. They die alone. It is, in other words, a society where there are no connections, there are no guide posts, to help people find their way. I think back to a better time during the Edo period, for example, when we had things such as tonarigumi, which are neighborhood mutual aid associations. I wonder if it would not be possible to create some kind of a similar mutual help network in society that the government could also support.
待機児童の問題も大きな問題でありまして、今約8000人と言われておりますが、実際にはその3、4倍はあるだろうと言われております。女性の就労が当たり前の時代、 そういうことを踏まえて、対策を進めていかなければならないわけですが、例えば横浜などは非常に先見的な取り組みをしていて、そうした事例を参考にしながら、すでに資格を持った保育士などの就労の機会を増やしていくとか、あるいは待遇の改善をしていくとか、そういうことを通じて横浜は3年間で待機児童ゼロということを実現いたしました。そうした先見的な事例もありますから、東京もぜひそういうことを参考にしながら、そうした取り組みを進めていければと思っております。
Another issue that is facing Tokyo is the fact that, on the one hand, we are graying, but on the other hand, there is the problem that it is very difficult to raise children in this society. When we consider the fact that there are some 8,000 children officially waiting on waiting lists to get into daycare facilities, it has been said actually that the reality is that the actual number of children waiting are 3 or 4 times that 8,000 figure. We are now in an age where it is assumed that women, if they want to, can work, that they should be able to work. Based on this, we have seen the example of such cities as Yokohama, which has tried to solve this waiting list for children in daycare centers problem. They have, for example, been able to improve the compensation, the working conditions for people who have the certification to be able to look after children. Who they also have put into place policies so that more of such people, qualified people, can be employed. As a result of their efforts, Yokohama has been able to decrease that number of children on waiting lists to 0 in a matter of 3 years. I think Tokyo can certainly learn from such advanced countermeasures, and we can also try to decrease the number of children on waiting lists.
私も4年間で待機児童ゼロを目指してやっていきたいと思っております。
In fact, to be very, very specific, I also would like to propose that for Tokyo, we would be able to bring that waiting list number of children to 0 in 4 years.
オリンピック・パラリンピックについては、当初私は、震災や原発事故のことを考えますと、気が重いという感じを持っておりました。福島から5万人近い方々が県外に出ておられる、避難しておられる、東北全体で約30万人の方々が、仮設住宅に住んでおられる、家を奪われ、あるいは仕事を奪われ、学校に行く機会を奪われている、そういう方々がそれだけおられるということですから、東京のちょうど山手線の内側の2倍に当たる面積が福島で全くめちゃくちゃにやられました。
In regard to hosting the Olympics and Paralympics, when I first heard about this issue, my first feeling was that taking into consideration the after effects of the terrible earthquake in the Tohoku region, taking into account the after effects of the nuclear power plant accident, I regarded such a possibility with a very, very heavy heart. The reason I say this is that, as you know, some 50,000 people had to leave Fukushima prefecture. They had to evacuate to other areas. In the entire Tohoku region, we still see some 300,000 people living in temporary housings. In other words, so many people have lost their homes, they have lost their jobs, they have lost the opportunity to go to their schools. This is a huge number. In fact, to give you some kind of a perspective for people living in Tokyo, in Fukushima, an area that is twice the size of the area enclosed by the Yamanote circular railway line, an area twice that size, it has really been devastated.
そういう状況を考えると、東京で、オリンピック・パラリンピックをやるということは、かなり気の重い感じを持っておりましたが、しかし、東京で開催するということが決まってからは、私は180度考え方を転換いたしました。
So, as I mentioned earlier, when I considered the fact that Tokyo might host the Olympics and Paralympics, again, I had to think about this matter with a very, very heavy heart. Having said all of this, however, the fact that the Olympics has been designated, it has been decided that they will come to Japan, I have, as a result, changed my thinking about this matter 180 degrees.
2020年の五輪開催というものを一つの目標期限として、原発を再稼働させず、それをてことして自然エネルギーというものを活用して日本経済の活力を生み出していく、そういう力にしていきたい、きっかけにしていきたいと考え方を改めたということです。
What I mean by having changed my thinking 180 degrees is that I would now like to think of the 2020 Olympics as being a kind of specific goal in terms of an actual deadline date. In other words, without resorting to nuclear power plants, using instead a focus on building up renewable energy sources, I believe that this 2020 deadline for the Olympics can now be thought of as a way to revitalize the entire Japanese economy. In other words, by focusing on renewable energy sources instead of nuclear energy, I think we can find a new strength that will support the growth of the Japanese economy.
東京東北オリンピックという形にして、具体的にどれだけ、それが、できるかということはいろいろ検討しなければなりませんが、IOC がいろいろ決められる競技のことなどもありますから、どれだけ、それが具体的になるかはいろいろ検討しなければなりませんが、しかし少なくとも東北に恩恵が、オリンピック・パラリンピックの恩恵というものが行き渡るように、十分そのことを念頭に置いて、取り組んでいかなければなるまいと思っております。東北とその恩恵を分かち合えるようにしていきたいと思っているところです。
In regard to the 2020 Olympics and Paralympics, I would like to think of them not as the Tokyo Paralympics and Olympics, but rather the Tokyo-Tohoku Olympics and Paralympics. In regard to the actual details about what can be done to realize such a concept, of course, we still have to investigate this matter in much detail, and we must coordinate with the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, which makes decisions about the way different competitions are held. But even though we will fundamentally work out the details more carefully at a later date, I think the fundamental idea that we want to keep in mind is that the benefits, the merits of the Olympics and Paralympics should always be shared with the Tohoku region.
再生可能エネルギー、あるいはその分散型のシステム、蓄電技術などを駆使して最先端の自然エネルギー大国、日本というものをアピールする機会にしていければと思います。
I think that by using the Olympics to showcase how Japan will have by then become leading a nation in terms of renewable energy sources in regard to decentralized energy systems, in regard to new power storage technologies. In other words, by showcasing to the world that Japan has become a leader in innovative, advanced renewable energy technologies, I think we will be able to make a great appeal to the international community for Japan.
選手村とかあるいは宿泊施設とかいくらでも自然エネルギーを活用して、一つのモデルを示していくということは、現実的に可能な話だと思います。
I think the fact that we will be able to use renewable energy sources in a variety of different ways in relation to the Olympics, for example, by using renewable energy sources for the athletes' village, for different accommodation facilities, I think we'll be able to show, I think all of these are realistically possible.
一つだけ懸念していることは、喧嘩越しの外交で平和の祭典というものがうまく進めていくことができるのかどうか。外交の問題はこれは国の専権事項でありますから、党として取り組めることは限度があることはもちろんであります。もちろん、言いたいことはというか言うべきことははっきりと、言わなければなりませんが、しかし前輪友好的な関係というものが成り立たなければ平和のオリンピックというものができるのかどうか、円滑にできるのかどうかということについて私は非常に懸念をいたしております。
I would like to add, in regard to the Olympics, one point, which is that I do have some concern, and that is the fact that in regard to the area of diplomacy and the trend that we are seeing in diplomacy is that there seems to be readiness. The Japanese word that is being used is kenkagoshi, which means literally the willingness to fight, perhaps a pugnacious attitude in diplomacy. If such a diplomatic stance is held, will it truly be possible to have the Olympics go smoothly? In other words, the Olympics, after all, are a celebration of peace, a festival of peace. Of course, in regard to diplomatic matters, this is something that is going to be decided by the national government. There's a limit as to what the Tokyo government can say. However, I believe it is very important for anyone in a position of responsibility to speak up when words need to be said. In other words, I have this fundamental concern that unless we are able to have a feeling of amicability with all of the nations of the world, neighboring nations, etc., I wonder if we will truly be able to have a smooth proceeding of this festival of peace, which is the Olympics and Paralympics.
今度の選挙では原発は争点ではないという人がおりますけども、先の震災では東京の一部で水も止まり、電気も止まり、あるいは外国の方々もたくさん故国に帰られた方々がありました。東京の水を供給する拠点の一つである金町の浄水場あたりもセシウムがいまだに残っていて、その汚泥を取り除く必要が早急に迫られている、さまざまなそうした問題があります。
I know that some people are saying that by focusing on nuclear energy, that is not the correct way to approach this election. In other words, the nuclear power plants should not be the focus of this election. However, when we consider what happened after the great earthquake in Tohoku, we saw that water supplies, electricity supplies were stopped to parts of Tokyo. Many people, foreign persons, left the country as a result. We also see that one of the water treatment facilities supplying a great deal of water to Tokyo, which is the Kanematsu water treatment facility. Even now, this treatment facility has problems in that there are still trace levels of cesium in the water. Also, the sludge that is being produced by this treatment plant needs to be disposed of in some way. In other words, there are many outstanding problems that Tokyo faces as a result of this past earthquake.
福島の事故の後、私は東日本の海岸に瓦礫を積んで5メートル10メートルの瓦礫を積んで、そこにその土地その土地のシイとかタブとかカシとかそうした、広葉樹を植えていく、緑の苗木を植えていく、300キロの沿岸に、これから10年かけて9000万本の苗木を植えていくというそういうプロジェクトに取り組んでまいりました。
After the Fukushima accident, because so much of the trees along the coastlines were washed away, I have embarked on a project. I'm part of a project that is trying to plant saplings, young trees that are native to each of the areas along the beaches of the eastern coast of Japan. We're taking the rubble, the debris that was produced as a result of the terrible tidal wave, and we are building maybe 5 meters, 10 meters of extra beach on which we are planting these saplings. We have a plan to eventually plant about 300 kilometers of beach with about 9,000 saplings over a period of 10 years. Over a period of 10 years.
あの辺りを歩けば歩くほど、福島が完全に破壊されたという実感を禁じ得ません。東北あるいは関東一円に放射能がばらまかれました。原発や核のゴミを地方に押し付けて大消費地として便利さだけを、いただこうというそういう、虫のいい話がこのままいつまで続けていけるのか。
When one walks along the coast of Fukushima, one realizes just how devastating this terrible accident was. We see that a huge area encompassing all of Tohoku, encompassing, in fact, the Kanto area, we are overall subjected to a great deal of radioactive matter that was emitted into the air. I think we must somehow review our policies of the past. In other words, Tokyo has until now basically pushed all of the burdens of nuclear power plants, radioactive waste materials onto the local areas. It has only decided in return to take the convenience afforded by the electricity that is produced. How much longer can we continue to hold this kind of a path, which is really truly not fair?
都知事の第一の仕事、任務というのは、都民の命と暮らしを守るということです。今申し上げたようなことは、まさにこれは都知事、都政に一番関係のあることじゃないでしょうか。
When you consider that the primary job of the governor of Tokyo is to protect the lives and the livelihood, the way of life of its citizens, you can see that all of the things that I've been describing until now immediately has an impact on or is very closely intertwined with metropolitan government affairs.
原発の話は争点ではないなんてとんでもない話だと私は思います。
In other words, I feel very, very strongly that people who criticize me and saying that the main issue for this election is not nuclear power plants, I think that is a completely mistaken approach.
ならばやはりここで原発の再稼働というものをやめて、自然エネルギーと省エネルギーで原発ゼロによって新たな成長を促していく。それが日本にとってベストな選択だと。それを東京から始めていくということが最も賢明な選択だと私は確信しております。
Given this background, I believe that what is truly important is to rebuild new economic activities based on renewable energy sources, on energy conservation technologies. In other words, to rebuild a new economy that does not depend on nuclear power plants. I believe that this approach will give rise to a revitalization of the Japanese economy, and by having Tokyo be at the forefront of such growth, I think this is good for all of Japan. This, I believe, is the most important element in this election.
原発は、改めて申し上げるまでもなく、もうすでに過去の産業と言ってもいい、エネルギーと言ってもいい。多くのヨーロッパの国々では、すでに原発から撤退を始めている企業もあります。
I think it would not be an overstatement to say that in many parts of the world, nuclear energy is considered to be an industry of the past, an energy of the past. There are many European nations that have already decided to pull back from nuclear energy. Many companies have pulled back as well.
ヨーロッパでは自然エネルギー、再生可能エネルギーが 20% から 40% すでに占めているというところもある。自然エネルギーこそこれからの成長の切り札です。
There are some European nations. There's some nations that are already deriving 20 to 40% of their primary energy supplies from renewable energy sources. I believe that renewable energy sources are going to be the key to future economic growth.
ドイツでは自然エネルギーに転換したことによってこの6年で20万人雇用が増えたということを聞きました。日本もここで自然エネルギーに切り替えて、リスクの多い高くつく原発というものに決別をして、新しいエネルギーによってその成長の果実によって、これからの時代の福祉とか雇用というものに当てていかなくてはならない、そのように思っております。
As you know, Germany has made a big shift to promoting renewable energy sources. I've heard that over the past 6 years, they have, as a result, been able to increase their employment by 200,000 jobs. I believe that Japan also should make a similar decision to turn away from nuclear power and move toward renewable energy sources. In other words, to move away from nuclear power, which is extremely risky and extremely costly, and to go to renewable energy sources which can revitalize the economy. I believe that the future for our nation is to take renewable energy sources and stimulate growth and take the fruits or results of that growth and spend it on improving welfare and employment.
人口学者によりますと、これから日本の人口はどんどん減り続けて、今1億3000万人の人口が50年後には9000万人、100年後には4000万人、 4000万人というのは江戸時代に近い人口です。
According to academics who who are specialized in demographics, it is said that Japan's population will continue to decrease in the future. At present, we have 130 million people. In 50 years, that number is expected to drop to 90 million people. In 100 years, that will drop to 40 million people. 40 million people is about the population of Japan during the Edo period.
そういう中で、今までと同じように大量生産、大量消費の経済成長市場主義でやっていけるのか、私は無理だと思います。
Given such demographics, is it really possible for us to be able to stick to the economic policies of the past, where we focused on mass production, mass consumption, basically a market-oriented economy?
今回の選挙はそういう意味で、日本の文明の在り方を問う選挙であり、選択の機会であり、あるいは私たち日本人の価値観を問う選挙になるというふうに私は考えております。
So in that sense, I believe that this election is very, very important. It is an opportunity for the Japanese people to decide what choice they want the future of Japanese civilization to take. It's going to be an election about people choosing different value systems.
昔道元禅師という、日本の偉い禅宗のお坊さんですが、そのお坊さんが、ノーベル賞で平和賞を受賞したときに、文学賞を受賞したときにこういうことを申しました。春は花、夏ホトトギス、秋は月、冬雪さえて涼しかりけり。春は花、夏ホトトギス、秋は月、冬雪さえて涼しかりけり。
There's a saying that was made by a very, very famous Zen priest named Dogen. And
いやいや違います。川端さんが
When Mr. Kawabata won the Nobel Prize for Literature, he the words of this Dogen person came up, but he basically said that Japan has traditionally been a nation where in the spring you have flowers, in the summertime you have the voices of the cuckoo bird, in the fall you see the moon, and in the wintertime you see the snow, and this makes for a very pleasant, cool feeling in life.
四季の移り変わりのあるそうした豊かな自然の中で、日本人は、豊かな情操とか情感というものを培ってきたわけです。
In others, what I'm trying to say is that Japan has been an extraordinary country in that it has been blessed by nature. It has a very, very clearly delineated seasons. It has a rich or natural surroundings. And as a result, I believe this has given rise to the very rich Japanese sensibilities, the emotional life of our people.
山でも木でも川でも、あるいは草木でも、そうしたものを、神仏として八百万の神と昔から申しますが、そうした自然観の中で、日本人の感性というものは育まれてまいりました。
In other words, we're surrounded by rivers and trees, rocks, rivers, and we have, in the traditional Japanese beliefs, thought that there were a myriad different gods residing in each of these aspects of nature. In other words, there were numerous gods that existed. It is within this rich, enhanced world of nature that the Japanese sensibilities and emotional life has been nurtured.
その自然を生かしてそれをエネルギーに変えてこれから日本の活力のある国づくりを進めていく。
I believe that because we have been blessed with such wonderful aspects of nature, it is now time for us to take this wonderful natural resources and turn that into energy. In other words, to turn it into energy and allow it to become the catalyst or the key to reviving our entire nation.
こんなにロマンのあるやりがいのある仕事はない、そう思いながら今選挙に取り組んでおります。
As you can see, the kinds of things that I'm speaking about are huge in scale. There's a great deal of romanticism in much of what I'm saying, but I believe that the goal that I have set forth are tremendously worthwhile. In other words, these are the feelings that I have behind me as I work to win this election. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hosokawa, and I will soon open the floor to questions. And of course, working press first. And please introduce yourself by name and affiliation, and keep yourself to one question. I see so many hands up, so I will just start here with the gentleman.
初めは記者からご質問をお受けいたします。恐縮ございますが、たくさん挙手してますので、一人一問に限定させていただければと思います。
フリーのジャーナリストの田中隆作と申します。よろしくお願いいたします。細川さん、先ほど喧嘩越しの外交とおっしゃいました。中国の東北部、当時のマンチュリアで、終戦を迎えられた、細川さんの叔父上は、シベリアに抑留され、帰らぬ人となりました。おじい様にあたる小根文麿首相も非業の死を遂げられております。で、ここから質問です。まずちょっと訳してください。
Excuse me, you referred earlier, sir, to the idea of kenkagoshi diplomacy, which basically can be translated as pugnacious or willingness to fight kind of diplomacy. I'm reminded of your lineage, the fact that your uncle passed away in the northern part of the northeastern part of Manchuria, of China, Manchuria, at the end of the war. I also am reminded of your grandfather, who, Mr. Konoe, who was the head of the country and also died an untimely death. And this now I'm going to lead to my question.
ここから質問です。ダボス会議で安倍首相は、日中関係が緊張しているとする旨の趣旨の発言をし、国際社会の物議を醸し出しています。で、近隣諸国との緊張関係をてこに、戦争できる国に、しようとしているとも受け取れる、安倍政権の姿勢をどうお思いでしょうか。お考えを聞かせてください。
My question regards some statements made by Prime Minister Abe at the Davos conference recently. He was speaking about the tensions between Japan and China, and some of his comments invited criticisms from the international community. Some can look at the activities and actions of Mr. Abe and say that he is trying to leverage the increasing tensions between Japan and neighboring countries as an excuse or justification to try to remake Japan into a nation that can conduct or wage war. What do you think about Mr. Abe's actions and thinking?
先ほど申し上げたように、外交は国の専権事項でありますから、都としていろいろ申し上げることはいかがかと思いますが、どうも少し危うい感じがするということを先ほど申し上げました。どうも奥さんの昭恵さんの方がだいぶ私とほとんど同じ考えなんじゃないか、奥さんになっていただいた方がいいんじゃないかと私は思うけれども、ちょっと安倍さんのお考えを私直に伺ったことないものですから、その報道だけで知りましたので確認のしようがないんですが、やはり近い国とも遠い国とも友好的な関係を築いていくということは、これは仮に知事になりました時でも常に心して念頭に置いて取り組まなければならないことだと思っております。なお付け加えて言えば、例えば知事の場合でもですね、いろいろと例えば中国の PM25 と 2.5 とかっていうような話、問題につきましても、何か首都間の間でですね、北京とかソウルとか、いろいろそうした都市外交っていうものもあり得ると思いますし、いろいろその前輪友好的な関係を作っていくということは、いろいろテーマがあるのではないかと思っております。
As I mentioned earlier, the area of diplomacy is something that is basically the exclusive right of the national government to undertake. And so I even have some questions in my own mind about how much the metropolitan city government of Tokyo can speak out around such issues. Having said this, however, I mentioned earlier in my speech that I felt that some of the directions or some of the actions that were being taken by the national government did cause me concern. The word that is being used is ayaui, which which might be translated as perhaps slightly dangerous. But of course, in this regard, even Mr. Abe's wife, Ms. Akie Abe, has made similar comments. I think we share a similar viewpoint. It might be nice if she were the Prime Minister herself. But having said all of this, all of the things that I have heard about Mr. Abe are basically things that I've read in media reports. I've never actually spoken with Mr. Abe and heard his thoughts about these matters. But I think I can say some general things. First of all, whether we're talking about a distant country or a very close nation geographically, I believe that we must always keep in mind the idea of maintaining good relations, amicable relations. If I were to become a governor, I would always have that very much at the forefront of my mind. And I think that even though diplomacy is the realm of the national government, there are areas of diplomacy that the governor of Tokyo can be involved in. For example, in regard to specific issues such as PM 2.5, Particulate Matter 2.5, it might be that Tokyo and Beijing or maybe even Seoul might have some kind of diplomatic relations and try to discuss some of these issues. In other words, diplomacy between large cities is, I think, a possibility for the future. But again, I think what is important is to maintain good relationships with all nations of the world.
Okay, now I saw your hand too, please. Yeah. We have so many hands up. I will try to get everybody on board, but we have a limited time, so please be reminded that we might not be able to take all questions. Thank you very much. And keep yourself as short as possible.
CCTV. In December, you said that it would have been better if Abe had ditched the Olympics and focused on sorting out the nuclear problem. Now you're saying the Tokyo Olympics is an opportunity to focus on alternative energy, and it should be split with Tohoku. Now, people like Kenji Utsunomiya are focusing on the specific details, reducing the size of the stadium. It seems like you're tearing up the whole plan and going back to the drawing board. Can you give me any specifics about budgets, how much Tokyo would be involved, whether you would reduce infrastructure?
はい、その12月ではそのオリンピックは辞退した方がいいというようなコメントをされたんでございますが、今お話を聞いておりますと、やっぱりそれは再生エネルギーを打ち出すための一つの機会、オプチュニティにすればいいかという話をされていると思います。そしてまた東北とこれを分かち合うというような話をしていらっしゃるんでございますが、別な候補者宇都宮健治様の方ではもっと具体的なその案を出していると思うんでございます。例えばそのスタジアムのその規模を縮小するとか、いろいろ具体的なことを言ってるんでございますが、今お話を聞いておりますと、オリンピックはとりあえず進めるべきなんですけれど、ゼロからはいろいろ考えましょう、検討しましょうというような話がどうしても感じるんでございます。具体的に何か案はございますでしょうか。例えばその予算をこういうふうに変えるとか、インフラをこういうふうに変えるとか、何かございますでしょうか。
私は先ほど申し上げたように、当初は気が重かったということを申しましたが、東京での、五輪の開催が決まってからは180度考え方を改めましたと先ほど申し上げました。で、もちろん東京オリンピックの時のように、施設に大きなお金をかけて、やるというようなことは不可能であります。できるだけコンパクトに、しかし、心のこもったおもてなしの心がこもった、ソフトな面に重点を置いて、環境とか緑とかというものに配慮した、そしてその自然エネルギーというものを例えば、宿舎とかあるいは競技の施設とかさまざまなところに自然エネルギーというものを、例えば福島から風力発電の電力を持ってくるということもありますでしょう。バイオマスを、東北のバイオマスをもっと使うということもありますでしょう。いろいろな自然エネルギー、再生エネルギー、再生可能エネルギー、あるいは分散型のエネルギーというようなものを活用して、今度の東京オリンピックというものを原発に頼らないオリンピックにすると、そういうことは、世界に向けて日本が、自然エネルギー大国としてこれからスタートするにあたって、これから7年近くありますから、その間にそういう体制を整えてスタートできるならば、それは非常に、世界からも注目される、テーマではないかと思っております。
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, yes, I originally regarded the Olympic hosting with a heavy heart, but now, since it's been decided, I have taken a 180-degree turn in my thinking. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe that the Olympics is a place where first of all, I believe that we will not be able to have the kind of Olympics that we had in 1964 in Tokyo. In other words, where we spent tremendous amounts of money building infrastructure and spending a great deal of money. In fact, I think what we must aim for is to have a very compact Olympics. We must also focus on the software part of the Olympics. In other words, to have a great hospitality sense to greet foreign visitors, etc. And it also should be an Olympics that focuses on the environment, is environmentally friendly, is very green. And again, the main theme that I go back to is renewable energy sources. As I mentioned briefly, I believe renewable energy can be used for many of the facilities where we're talking about the athletes' village or the different accommodations or even some of the stadiums or venues where competitions will be held. I think, for example, we might be able to use wind power that was created in Fukushima, generated in Fukushima. We might be able to use biomass energy that uses biomass products from the Tohoku region. I believe that by being able to use decentralized systems, being able to use renewable energy sources, we will be able to show that we can be a nation that is not dependent on nuclear power, but that we are being reborn into leading a nation for renewable energy sources. I think we have a 7-year period before the Olympics occur. If we can start now, I think we can make a tremendous appeal to the international community by the times the Olympics is held.
I will try to take as many questions.
Merci beaucoup. Aujourd'hui, je suis correspondant deテレビジョンd'Internet franco-japonaise。日本語で質問申し上げます。各方法に伺っているのですが、ダンス規制といって夜中の1時以降になると今商業施設においてダンスが実質的にできなくなっている、あるいは有害図書規制といって、性的な表現がきついというものに対して発行が実質できなくなっている、こういう夜景国家的とも言うべき政策に対してはどのようなスタンスで臨まれるか伺いたいと思います。メッシ。
ちょっと分かりました。断水の規制ですね。
ダンス。
ダンス。
踊るダンス規制。失礼しました。
はい。で、最後明かりのこと、照明のことですか。
有害図書。何と訳せばいいのか。悪書ですね。悪書、悪い本だということで、性的な表現、漫画において性的な表現がきついと呼ばれるものが、実質的に売られないように、途上令などで規制されているということですね。以上です。
Excuse me, I'm asking the same question of all of the different candidates. The interpreter apologizes for not understanding some of the terms, but there are several directives that have been issued by the city. For example, that you cannot have large-scale dance activities in public facilities after, for example, 1 a.m. Also, that there are specific directives forbidding the use or publication of reading materials that are considered too sexually explicit, if the interpreter is understanding correctly. What do you think about such restrictions?
私はどちらかというと保守的な考え方をしている古い人間なものですから、有害図書などが氾濫をしているということについては、私自身はあまりいい気分はいたしません。ただ発行すること自体はそれはそういう制限を加えるということはいかがかなと思うし、その置く場所とかですね、そうしたものについて閲覧できる場所等についてやっぱりある程度の、公共の秩序というか領女風俗というものに基づいた規制というものは私は必要ではないかと思っております。ダンスについても、明け方まであんまり人の家の近くでですねどんちゃん騒ぎされるのはこれはやっぱり公序良俗に反することだと思いますから、その辺は良識を持ってやっていただかなきゃならないし、あまり騒音が出るようならその辺の規制も、ある程度はやむを得ないことだろうと思っております。
I myself personally am of a conservative nature, and I am a person from perhaps an older era. So in regard to these kinds of harmful reading materials, literal translation, to have such reading materials just generally available and to always see them wherever you go is not something that fills me with great happiness. Having said this, however, I wonder about the restrictions that are being placed on their publication. Whether or not they're published is one thing, but in regard to where one can see, access such materials, I think that is something that needs to be given full consideration, in other words, in terms of maintaining public order. Also, in regard to dancing, certainly dancing is a good activity, but having a very loud, noisy dancing activities occur until dawn, the early morning hours, near residents' homes, I think is something that can be considered problematic. In other words, one needs to have a normal, a good sense about what is proper and not proper and what shows consideration to other persons. In other words, if there is something that is very late at night and making a lot of noise, then I can certainly understand that there would be a need for some kind of restrictions on such activities.
質問にはありませんでしたけども、私はカジノについても一言申し上げておきたいと思いますが、私はカジノについては反対です。やっぱりこれも公序良俗に反するというか、まあ船の上でやりゃいいじゃないかとか、いろんな意見もありますけども、私自身は反対の立場です。
This is not part of your question, but I would like to make another comment about casinos, because I realize that this is also a very large topic. I fundamentally am opposed to establishing or permitting casinos to be operated, because I know that there are some people who say that if we limit the activities of casinos and perhaps put them on boats or something like that, still I believe that this would go against general public order for society. I personally am opposed to such activities.
To me. That's it. Lots of hands up. So.
Rowley, Singapore Business Times, Mr. Former Prime Minister. If this is not a compact Olympics, if it's a full-scale Olympics, are you saying specifically that that will divert national resources away from Tohoku? When I say resources, I mean financial resources, construction industry resources, and so on. And therefore, the reconstruction of Tohoku could be delayed as a result. And very quickly, are you willing to see nuclear reactors started for a limited period, provided there is an agreement to terminate that at some point?
はい、2つの質問でございます。今、そのコンパクトのオリンピック、というお話をされたんでございますが、やはりその、通常の規模、大規模、フルスケールと言っておりますが、のオリンピックを望まないというその理由なんでございますが、これはやはりその、多くのその、資源、予算などをその東北の復興から、東京の方に迂回させてしまうので、コンパクトの方がいいという、ことなんでございますでしょうか。つまり、あんまりその大規模なオリンピックを日本で、東京で開催しますと、東北の復興が遅れるかもしれない、そういうような懸念はあるのでございますでしょうか。でもう一つの質問でございますが、その原発の再稼働を反対しているということでございますが、例えば期限を決めていずれ最終的にはその廃炉されるという、そういうような、あるいは止められるという前提であっても再稼働は一切認めないということでございますでしょうか。
まず後の質問の方からお答えいたしますが、今すぐ今原発は止まっているわけですが、今すぐゼロということを決めないと、40年経っても50年経ってもおそらく原発をやめるということにはならないだろうと思います。
I'd like to respond to your first question, your second question first. If I believe very strongly that if we don't make a decision right now to go to zero nuclear power plants, right now, as you know, they are all stopped. If we don't make this decision not to restart them at all, then I believe that 40 years from now, 50 years ago, we will be in a similar situation.
トップの仕事というのは大きな方向を決めると、それを決めないとなかなか、企業でもさまざまな産業でもどっちを向いて走ったらいいかわからない。今ゼロにするということを決めれば、多くの企業が自然エネルギーに向かって雪崩を打って、それに乗っていこうと、そういう流れに乗っていこうと。おそらくそうすると自然エネルギーはものすごいスピードでこれから成長すると思います。その流れを早く ここで決断して作る必要があるということが第一です。それからもう一つ、コンパクトなオリンピックということについてですが、これは別に東北と関係なしに、今の日本の財政状況というものを考えますと、大変な、借金を抱えているということはご承知の通りですから、そういう状況の中で、かつての五輪のような大きな施設でもって、にぎにぎしくそのオリンピックをやるということは、オリンピック・パラリンピックをするということは、これは慎まなければならないのではないかと思います。
I believe very strongly that it is the most important job of the leader, the top person in an organization, to give a general policy direction for the future. If a policy direction is not given, in fact, if we do not decide immediately go to zero nuclear power plants, then I believe that individual companies, individual industries will simply not know which way to turn, which way to start running towards. If, for example, we can make a decision that we will go away completely from nuclear power plants, then I believe the direction that companies and industries will immediately flow towards is developing new renewable energy sources or making more active use of renewable energy sources. In other words, I believe that we need to accelerate this flow toward renewable energy sources and technologies. By doing so, we will be able to accelerate growth of the economy. Secondly, when I spoke about a compact Olympics, my comments were not because I was thinking about Tohoku, but rather given the current fiscal situation of the Japanese government, considering the huge debt that this country and local governments bear, I believe that we will not be able to have the huge kind of infrastructure investments that we had in the past Olympics.
Okay, let me decide. Okay, Yosh, you first. And okay, Mr. Hosokawa agreed to stay a little bit longer, so I will be able to squeeze in a few more questions.
Yoshi Hotta, freelance. Thank you for coming to the club today. We understand that you're calling for zero nuclear power policy in your campaign platform, but the Tokyo metropolitan government owns only 1.2% of TEPCO stocks as of September last year. That is not large enough to use a veto power. And practically speaking, how do you implement your zero nuclear power policy?
はい、そのゼロ原発政策を推進していらっしゃるということはよくわかるんでございます。これが一番重要なその政策だというふうにもよくわかるんでございます。しかしながら東京都はその昨年9月時点におきましては東電の 1.2% の株を所有しているということでございます。これによって例えば否決権を行使するというには至らないわけでございますが、このゼロその原発政策をどうやって実現するんでございますでしょうか。
確かに、東京都の株式の保有というのは、第4位でありますから、その発言力にそれほど、大きな力がないと言えばそう言えるのかもしれません。しかし、その第4位の株主でありましても、東電に対してもし私が知事に就任したならば経営計画についての詳細を明らかにしてもらいたい、あるいは電力料金の透明化を、図ってもらいたい、いろいろ注文をつけることはできると思います。東京エネルギー戦略会議というようなものを、立ち上げようと思っておりますが、知事に就任した場合にはですね、そうしたところで具体的に、東電に突きつけるべき、いくつものテーマについて、それを投げかけて、回答を求めたいとそう思っているところです。
Yes, certainly. We are at present the number 4 shareholder of TEPCO. I mean, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government is, and of course, you might say that because we are number 4, we do not have a very, very loud voice in regard to speaking with TEPCO. Having said this, however, we are, after all, the number 4 shareholder, and if I am elected governor, I believe it is very, very possible for us to ask questions of TEPCO, for example, to ask them to clarify the details of their management plan, business plans, to also make a more transparent the reasoning behind their setting specific electricity prices. If I'm elected, I intend to establish what I would call a Tokyo Energy Strategy Council. And in this council or this committee, I would like to list up or to deliberate more specific questions that we, as the metropolitan government, would ask TEPCO to answer.
Maybe a follow-up from my side, but you're a big customer of TEPCO.
そうですね。あとその東電の大きなそのお客様であるわけでございます。とはそれについていかがでございますでしょうか。
What leverage would you basically use to make your voice heard more by TEPCO? Just more than asking questions.
いろんな質問を突きつけるだけではなく、やっぱり非常に大きなそのお客様ということ、その立場を利用しまして、TEPCOにしましてどのようなことを東電にできると思いますでしょうか。
I understand that more companies will offer electricity, for example. Would that be an alternative?
例えばその他にTEPCOに東電に代わるようなその別な電力提供会社というのがどんどん設立されているというふうに聞いているのでございますが、そういうところのエネルギーを使うとか、そういうようなこともお考えでございますでしょうか。
それは東京そのエネルギー戦略会議というもので具体的に提言をいただいて、おそらくその中にそうした考え方も入ってくると思います。発送電の分離とか、いろいろな東電に突きつけるべき課題がありますから、今お話のあったようなことも含めてさまざまな提案をいくつもの提案を突きつけていきたい。再稼働をするという時期が多分春先初夏のくらいには行われるのではないかと思いますから、それまでにはこのエネルギー戦略会議というものを立ち上げないと方向が決まりません。ですから、知事に就任した場合には早急にその戦略会議というものを立ち上げて、具体的なそうした方策というものを示していきたいと思います。
Certainly, as I mentioned, this Energy Strategic Council or Committee is, I think, going to be a place where the specific proposals will be discussed, and I think the suggestion that you mentioned will definitely be included as one of the proposals. In other words, I think there are many different issues that or proposals that we can present to TEPCO, including the matter that you just discussed. I think what is very important to realize is that the decision to restart a specific nuclear power plant facility would probably be made in the spring of this year or early in the summer. And what is important is to make sure that we have specific proposals or ideas or questions that this strategic committee will put together in place before that decision is made. So what I'm saying is that if I'm elected governor, one of my first priorities, my first actions will to immediately be to establish this council or committee.
Okay, Michael.
Michael Penner of the Shingetsu News Agency. My question for you is a political one, and that is, of course, your main theme, the backbone of your campaign is anti-nuclear policy. But there is one other major candidate in this race with a very similar policy, and that's Mr. Kenji Utsunomiya. My question for you is, since we have two major candidates, both representing this stream of thought, aren't you simply going to be splitting the anti-nuclear vote and handing an easy victory to Mr. Masuzoe in this election? Thank you.
すみません、その政治的な質問でございます。今、脱原発政策を一番の政策というふうに謳っているわけでございますが、実はもう一人の有力な候補者、宇都宮健児様も脱原発というその路線を取っているわけでございます。このようにその有力な候補者2人が同じそのスローガンで戦うということになりますと、結局そのお互いからその票を奪い合って、最終的にはその舛添さんが簡単に知事になれるようなこと、これを可能にしてしまうんではないんでしょうか。
宇都宮さんから何回か宇都宮さんご本人からというよりもその周囲の方から、なんとか話し合いができないかというふうなお申し入れが私の方の事務所にもありました。しかし、そこでお話し合いをするということは何か裏取引をしたというふうに 受け取られかねない、ですから、そこのところは私としても慎重にならざるを得なかったということです。そして宇都宮さんは、確かに、脱原発ということをおっしゃっておられますが、しかし他の政策と同列的に脱原発ということをおっしゃっておられる。私は他の政策よりも脱原発ということに優位性を置いて、一番第一のこれがテーマだということをはっきりと申し上げて選挙戦を戦っております。ですから、その比重の置き方がだいぶ違うのではないかというふうに私は思っているところです。
To be very honest, people, not Mr. Utsunomiya directly, but the people around Mr. Utsunomiya have tried to contact my office several times with the idea of having the two of us meet and talk about the different things. But I felt I had to be very, very cautious about such a thing because if we did meet and speak about different things, it might be that people in the media or the general public might suspect that some kind of behind-the-scenes deal was being made between the two of us. Therefore, I could not help but be very cautious about the proposal for such a meeting. And I would like to point out that, yes, Mr. Utsunomiya certainly is taking a very anti-nuclear power plant, nuclear energy position. However, he has taken several other issues that he has regarded as very high priority issues, and he has put the anti-nuclear power plant issue on the same level as these other issues. I, however, have focused on zero nuclear power as being the first and foremost, most high priority issue of my campaign. I think, therefore, that although we are both against nuclear power, we have taken a different emphasis. I have emphasized this approach much more. So I think there is a distinction between our two campaigns.
Thank you very much. I understand that this was the last question. And I would like to thank Mr. Hosokawa to give us his speech and answer our questions. Thank you very much. Please, yes. And as it is a custom in our club, we also have prepared a one-year honorary membership. And of course, we expect you to come back if you become elected governor. We expect you to come back too. Thank you very much. And to our visitors, please remain seated until our guest has left. And I apologize to all the journalists whose questions I couldn't take. Thank you very much.
すべてのご質問を受けられなくて大変恐縮ございます。皆様ご着席のまま先生が退場されますのでよろしくお願いします。